but just in general, the whole concept of how you go about it. Obviously, I've watched a few videos and I found it very interesting, just the way that you go about explaining some of the different concepts, when it comes to confidence or even just, the way the ideologies and how you teach him through the things that you do. Like the other day we were watching, I think it was, you were talking about mind, and you were talking about cluttering the mind. And I think you put, you had a jar of water. Yeah. And my little man was watching it. He was just fixated on it the whole time as well. Yeah. And I like that whole concept. And obviously I don't know if it was to do with confidence, but you created a lion mask. Yeah, courage. I think it was bravery. Yeah. And I found it very interesting. So obviously, I wanted to see kind of what brought you down that part, and chat about it, obviously, because I think it's really important. I think especially with our generation, I think we're going about it differently in terms of how we interact with our kids, and some of the life lessons we're trying to teach them. So how did you come about it, and what led you down that path?
I think I would, I've been teaching Buddhism at primary schools for about 12 years now. That was like an accidental thing. I went to the school that I teach at now as a child, and we had a Buddhist teacher there. And then after I finished, I was about to start uni, and then she was like, do you want to come help me just assist with the classes? And then so I went along, and then just to hand out sheets and stuff. And then she's like, so I'm going to retire now. This is yours to do.
Yeah.
I was like, oh crap. Okay, cool.
Is that a full-time thing?
No.
Okay,
it's a volunteer thing through the Buddhist Council.
Yep.
And so I've been doing that for 12 years, once a week, normal schooling system, but SRE, so scripture teacher. And then during lockdown, the first lockdown, I kind of thought, I love gather and stitch, but there's, I love children as well, and I love seeing the way they learn, and I love how innocent they are. They're so you can mold them into anything, just how we were.
Yeah.
And so that was in the back of my head, and I kind of thought, I should start a YouTube channel. Maybe I'm not doing anything else, because I had to stop gather and stitch. We couldn't do any beauty, we couldn't do any fittings, I couldn't do any part of gather and stitch.
Because during lockdown. Yeah.
So then I was like, how do I keep myself busy? And I thought about that. I set some stuff up, but then I didn't really do anything about it. Then now, 2 years later or 3 years later, I went through some personal things last year, and it was a lot to do with how we can consciously parent, I guess, so that we don't pass on our past trauma and all that stuff unconsciously to the next generation, which is, I think, what our parents more so had to survive. So what their parents were, they kind of just absorbed, and then they kind of just were busy, trying to earn an income, learn how to live in a new country. They didn't get to focus on themselves and focus on their trauma or whatever it was. And a lot of it kind of got passed on to us without knowing.
Completely agree, yeah.
So then how do we parent so we don't do that for the next generation? And that for me is kind of Buddhist practices, I guess, which is what Metta Minds is based upon, but it's universal practices.
Of course.
Of kindness and courage and compassion and all that. And so, this year I just thought, let me just do it. And then here we are. So it just all regurgitated out of my brain, and I just went with it and started it.
So was it something that you personally experienced, or I know you touched on it with your parent, just watching the generation before us, and it's funny, we were having this conversation last night, a round table, just with my mates and my cousins, and we're talking about that. And one of the things we talked about is, as you get older, I guess you start to understand, you have your angst and you have your pain, and you have your you have your personal feelings between towards your parents, when it comes to certain personal decisions that you made based on what they've asked or they made for you.
Yeah.
Basically, I felt like as I got older, I understood like it's a lot more deeper than that. And you touched on it, like it's how their parents and how they were brought up. And then, and on top of that, one of the things that we touched on, which was really important, was that they've come to a new country. So not only are they bringing all that with them, they're coming to a new country and having to deal with all the shit here, the environment, and then raising us in this environment, and it's brand new environment which they probably aren't aware of, right? And they're learning at the same time. So when you really start looking at it in that perspective, you realize a lot of the decisions they made for you, the conversations you had, or how they felt about you, or whatever it was, you can, you know, it's kind of justified, you know. It's never done out of ill will or anything like that. So was that something, like, was a personal experience? Was that something that triggered it? Because I feel like for you to go down this path, there has to be a sense of like even you personally experiencing certain moments or things in your life that, you know, that gravitated you towards wanting to do something like this.
Yeah, I think my parents, like, grateful for everything that they did, but you know, there are things that I wish they were conscious about.
Of course.
Everyone is going to have that about their parents. At the same time, I wouldn't be who I am if they hadn't parented me that way, so I'm grateful for that too. And then having my daughter 3.5 years ago, I think that was the shift. Like, okay, now I'm so aware, hyper aware of how my behavior is going to impact her. And so it was more like being conscious of like how I was parented, you know, especially as a brown woman growing up, like as a little young brown girl, seen and not heard a lot. And it's so ingrained that you don't realize how ingrained it is. Like, I was talking to one of my Gather and Stitch clients, and she was saying how, like, when she was in year 6, she wanted to do debating. And her dad was like, no, why would you put yourself out there? Like, just, you know. Yeah. And then she did it anyway, and she won. And then she went home and showed her dad how she won. And her dad was like, oh, okay, so she's actually good and she's actually interested and she wants to do it. Had that been a guy, had that been a boy, well, that same conversation, would it have gone like that? And most likely not. You may have been like, go for it, son, right? So it's so ingrained, we don't notice it. And I remember so many times in my life where I was called a know-it-all for just wanting to know it all. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I made a conscious effort not to raise my daughter that way. And then I think 3.5 years later, when she was 3.5 is when I started Metta Minds. And I also saw the results of that parenting. She's so confident. Like, her teachers will always say she's got confidence in bucket loads. And I think I just consciously made sure I'm trying my hardest. You know, you never know. You could try your hardest and still.
Yeah, you still have to
balance
it. Yeah, and at the same time, you're still ducking and weaving on the those little moments where sometimes you do kind of detour from, you know what I mean? And that's normal, right? But I think as long as you're aware of it,
as long as you're aware of it, I'm stopping not stopping myself, because I would always want her to have a voice, but to make sure she has a voice. Like, if she's suggesting something, taking that on, like treating her like an equal, someone who has an equal stake in the family, you know, being able to make suggestions like that. And then I saw the results of what confidence can do, and you know, trying my best to raise her kind, like to be kind as well. Because like once on the school playground, she said, these two boys, they called out to me and they said, hey, Anara, you're cute. And then I said, well, what'd you say? And she goes, I said, yeah, I know I am. So I was like, it's so cute. It's so adorable. But to have that confidence of being like, yeah, I am. Thank you. It's nice. That's what we all need. Like, we don't need validation from anyone else. We should. And that creates happiness in yourself, which creates happiness in others.
I think at the same time, like, we're led to believe we shouldn't and we can't, or we shouldn't. And it's something weird about feeling that way. Yeah. That confidence, you know, and it's something that, you know, obviously I've had to learn, and I'm lucky enough because, you know, like I'm into like martial arts, and I train, and that's where I got my confidence from, and believing what I really believed, as opposed to like, oh, it's wrong to feel this way, because it feels like it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And that's important as well, because you know, we're led to believe that that's not how we should be feeling, or there's something weird about feeling that way. It doesn't feel right, but
it's like selfish.
It's selfish almost. You know what I mean? And it's really good, and I can tell just by you telling me that, even everything that's led into your life with, you know, with your business and with everything, it makes sense as to why you're going down that path. You know, because it does take those moments for you to realize that you're capable, and you'll be surprised when you know, even if it's a small goal, a goal or a small vision for yourself, and you see it achieving it out, it feels good. And then you realize it becomes addictive over time, because you realize, oh, wait a second, if I set my mind to it, you know, it's like, you know, it's funny you're talking about the story about the debate, and you know, your friend asking, you know, her father and etc. It was the same for me in year 11. The music, I think I came second in music. I don't know how that happened, but I always had a love for music. Yeah, I had a love for music, and then the music teacher actually told my dad that. At the parent teachers, he was like, "Your son's got a knack for this. You know, you should consider it." And I remember him saying, like, "What's in music? Like, how are you gonna make a living, right?" So I didn't end up doing it, but I ended up, maybe 3-4 years later, maybe 5 years later, getting into like rapping and stuff, right? I'm a big hip hop fan, and I ended up building my own studio at home and doing it. And it was funny, because they actually then realized, holy shit, like he has a love for this, because like I'm doing it in front of them, and something, that's what I tell people. I'm like, instead of trying to, sometimes you can't sit there and conversate and convince your parents, but show them, and that's the best lesson you can give them, is show them, and then they're watching you doing it, and then it's like, oh crap, like I made a bit of a blunder here, you know, holding him back, because I can see he has a love for it, because I have to have a love if I'm going to go through that and sacrifice my time and you know, to go out or whatever, to spend time in this little room and do what I'm doing, right? It was the same thing with martial arts. Like I remember they came to my first fight, never came to a fight after. 10, 15 years later, I'm still doing it, and they're seeing me like rather go to the gym and train than go and do other things. And then, you know, when I cut weight for training and whatever, my mum was on that journey with me eventually. She understood, like, you know, my mood swings because I'm like low on, you know, food or whatever it is, right? But she came on that journey with me, and she realized, oh, you have a love for it. And then I started realizing that, man, you just got to pursue what you want, and sometimes you got to take them along for the ride with you, and then you know, you're also helping him that way. But if you're trying to conversate with someone that doesn't have that belief system that you have, you know, or see it the way you have, like even with my, you know, my podcasting, what I'm doing with my brand and everything, they're firsthand seeing, oh damn, you have a love for it, because you know, you started off doing it in the living room, and now you know, you're out and all those things. So I stopped looking for validation in others and even in them, and just thought, if I feel right about it, I'm gonna do it, and then they're gonna eventually jump on board and realize, oh wow, you actually have a love for it. So I completely agree. You know, and in that sense, that, you know, and the fact that she went and did it anyway, just showed, you know, her dad, like, oh shit, like I got a bit of work to do on, you know, my belief systems, even, you know, because I also think the flip side, I always tell my mom, and you know, you're never too old to grow as well. Like you're always growing, right? And there's always new things that come along and new experiences that show you that, oh, I was stuck in these ways. But it also comes through you and how you do things and how you have that relationship with them. You're opening their mind. So I always say it's almost detrimental for you to not speak out in the sense like, oh, I'm going to be a rebel, but speak out in the sense that your feelings, and let know how you feel, because sometimes you're helping them at the same time, you know. So
parents,
go on.
Parents will always have an unconditional love for
you.
100%. And so, like, if you think about your children, you're gonna love them. Like, 100%. Even if they run off, do whatever, you're gonna love them. So we have to just trust that they're gonna love us sometimes. And you're right, like, I always say you can't give somebody something you don't have.
Yeah.
If you don't have kindness, you can't give kindness. If you don't have confidence, you're not going to give confidence. You don't have self-love, you're not going to give love.
I completely agree.
So our parents didn't have the ability to let us follow their passions because they couldn't do it. So they didn't know how to take those risks. They didn't know what it was like to follow their dreams because they had to survive and they had to
their parameters is different, right?
They had to do what they could to earn money.
100%.
Whereas we kind of have a bit of money. We're in a country where you can get by doing random things and still earn money. And so we're allowed to be like, okay, what makes us happy? And then making yourself, like Metta Minds, I talk about that all the time, touching on like truly who you are and what makes you happy, because that's going to make everyone around you happy. And it might mean defying your parents sometimes, but you can always do things with kindness. And one of those things, like you said, was like showing them how passionate you are about something. No one's really stopping you from doing anything except yourself. So if you are like, you know, like your music teacher saw, she saw something because you're doing it in front of her, right? Same with your parents. You might just have to show them sometimes. And even if they're not on board, just try your best and hardest. Like, let yourself shine. Don't let anyone else kind of dim that light for you, including yourself. Because a lot of the time it is ourselves. We just we believe what other people tell us, and we listen to that voice instead of what's inside
the
us.
outside noise. Yeah.
Because I remember when I did part-time jobs and stuff, like I've never worked full-time anywhere. I started Gather and Stitch. But I remember like that dread on the Sunday night when you had something on Monday that you really didn't want to. And that sinking feeling in my stomach, I will never forget, because that was the feeling where I was like, I never want to feel like this. I never want to feel that dread about doing something I don't want to do. Why would we live a life where we don't want to do it, you know? Life is short, like, you know, I
think it's been built, right? It's been ingrained in you to think that all these unpleasant journeys and this unpleasant thing that you're doing, it's just part of life, and it's painful, right? And that's how they've been taught as well, right? Is that, oh, you just got to do this because this is how it is. But and that's passed on to you. But in actual fact, I always say, if you're doing what you love, you know, I always used to think it was funny when people used to say, man, I'd do it for free. But I get it now. I get it now, if it makes sense, you know, like, and, you know, like the last guest I had is something he said to me that ingrained in me. He goes, man, even if what he's doing doesn't end up being, you know, something, you know, much bigger or something that establishes him, I'm still going to be doing it. And that's how it is. Like, that's the way I look at even everything I'm doing. I'm like, if I don't enjoy what I'm doing, then whatever comes with it it's irrelevant. It doesn't even matter, right? And then you're not going to learn to appreciate it. So that's kind of how I look at it. When you do something you really love, you're not worried about all those other incentives that have been put onto you that you think you need in order to live a good life. You know what I mean? Like, this is how I live my life. Like, even like, you know, if you know, typically you get married, you buy a house and blah, blah, blah. And we're having this conversation, and, you know, everyone's different. Some people's, you know, when they have a list of what's important to them, it may not be establishing and buying a house straight away or whatever. It may be like, oh, we're going to go rent instead, you know, because I want to, the lifestyle that I'm living, that's more important than you know, spending the rest of my life trying to pay something off because that's what was told to me, that this is what you got to do kind of thing, you know. So it's very hard to break out of those barriers, right? When you you know, when you do some of those exercises, you know, I even caught the one where you went to the farm. But even the one I was talking about with the jar of water, and how do you come up with that process? Like, how do you come up with that creativity and explaining it? Because it makes a hell of sense when you watch it. I ain't gonna lie, it makes a hell of sense when you watch it. But it's impressive in the sense of how you're using basic things to explain it. So how do you come up with that?
I think I've always been really good with kids. And explaining things in the basic sense. So it just made sense when, because the Buddhist Council gives you a guide on what you can teach, but they don't really tell you how you can teach it. So it's just like being trial and error.
Yeah.
And then being around kids, and you realize, I did like work experience here and there with kids as well. So I've always been in and around kids, and just getting down to their levels and talking to them and teaching to them. I'm also quite I visualize a lot. I think because I'm very creative as well. Like, you know, I have to see it visually in my mind, and I think kids are like that too. Like, and adults. Like, we work really well when we can kind of visualize it, and in the simplest way to give the biggest concept. And if you want, you can look at it deeply or basically. And as an adult, you'll look at that example with the jar and think about it really deeply. But as a child, they're like, oh yeah, my mind is so messy, and if I breathe, everything settles in the jar. My mind is clear. Like, when I do that demonstration at school, I'll take a jar, I'll take some rice or seeds or whatever, and I'll have a conversation with them about the rice, and we'll joke about what they cook at home and stuff. So it's like engaging from the start,
from the beginning.
And then when we stir the jar, they're just dead silence, like they're just looking at it, because it's so captivating, and they can visualize in their mind, okay, this is how my thoughts are running around, and then it will become still, and then next time, like I do that early on, and with the Metta Minds, if you go in order, it's quite early on as well, so that next time when they meditate or when they're just trying to be still, they can visualize that and be like, you can visualize your thoughts becoming still.
That's half the battle, right? It's the visualization, and it's so easy when you visualize things, and it kind of makes sense to you, and you can find your way there, right? You know, it's like I always say, you try to emulate what your end goal is, and when you try to emulate what your end goal is, then everything starts to kind of fall into place in what you're trying to do. It may not look like at the beginning at what you're trying to get towards the end, but if you emulate it, then I feel like it starts to unravel in front of you.
That's right.
You know, when I experience that, that's completely agreed. Like, it's the visualization part, you know, that being able to see how it looks and you know, I think is an important factor. Even the mask one with the lion, now every time they see a lion, they're going to think, I'm going to be brave, you know, and we already have that with a lion. We already think lions are brave, like that's ingrained in us. So why not think of it as you being a lion, being brave? And so whenever you see that imagery of a lion, their brain is going to think, I'm brave. So that's like, it's just about every day, like, you know, when one of the episodes about going on a walk and noticing the things around you, and like, was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday we were going through the city. We were just walking through, and Anara was in the pram, and she's like, I'm a bit bored. And I was like, well, you've got your imagination. You'd never be bored. So start noticing, like I always encourage her to notice the things around her. Because if we just look around us, there's so many beautiful things. You would never, ever be bored. When we go on for walks, like we always try and notice all these little signs and things around us. And then you just start to appreciate everything that, you know, that's around you, and you never be bored. Because you're thinking about how something is the way it is, or being grateful for it. I think at a young age, I think, you know, you being a mom and me being a dad as well, you realize how important the imagination, and then you realize over time, like we touched on at the start, like just how we've been suppressed, right, over time, and you realize how important that aspect and that aspect of your imagination is in laying the platform for your life in general,
because
right?
Again, that's visualizing.
That's where everything comes from, right? Are you a meditator?
I am now. I didn't always be. I wasn't always.
Because when I watch your videos and the way you sit down, I was looking at my wife. I said, she's a meditator.
She's comfortable.
She's a meditator. That's because I'm very big on it. I'm not going to say that I'm an everyday meditator, but I've it's changed my life like massively, because I am someone that's has a gazillion thoughts going through my head at one time. I've always had that battle, you know, and sometimes I got to slow down a little bit, and now having a son as well, I'm a bit more mindful of it, and sometimes in front of him, like you know, just how you were demonstrating in the video about taking deep breaths, you know, that's something that I try to do with him when I know that he's a bit, you know, he's either really tired or is acting out a little bit, or, you know, in those little moments. But like, how's that aspect been in terms of for yourself, just in you know, just in dealing with everything? Because like I said, one of the hardest things is to juggle everything, right? And and it's not even the physical exhaustions, it's the mental exhaustion, right? So
because so I got up at 12:30 this morning, 12:30 a.m. to do a wedding, and I'll probably not go to sleep till like 9 p.m. But I never feel the physical exhaustion unless I think about it. So it is a mind game. And a lot of our clients ask, aren't you tired? Yes, when I stop and think about it, I'm tired. But otherwise I just get on and it's fine. And I always say this because we teach our brains to be busy. Like we are constantly like, oh, what activities can our kids do? And I've spoken to parents where they're like, my child is so active, so I put them in active things. Like they want to use up their energy almost. So you're not actually teaching them ever to be calm. You're just teaching them to be active and focus on something else, and on and on and on. Whereas meditation, being still, being calm, being mindful, once you've mastered that, or mastering that, or practicing that, everything else is going to get so much better. That like being able to be still, meditate, mindful is being conscious and aware of who you are, your emotions, what you're doing, what you're thinking, what your thoughts are. It's imagining, it's having a vision, and then therefore when you go out and play cricket or sport or music or whatever, you're conscious and you're mindful and you're doing that to the best of your ability.
Because essentially you're just training them to think that's what you should be doing. You should be burning energy. You should be doing something. Otherwise, you're just like wasting time.
And like when I talk about this with the kids as well, they do talk about that. Like the year 5 and 6 kids, most of them have been with me since kindergarten. So they have they have used meditation here and there, and some of them love it, some of them teach it to their parents, some of them come from a environment where that is practiced and accepted. And you know, I can tell that they're a lot calmer and mindful in class as well. And then some kids will be like, I don't have time for that, you know. And how I explain it to them is, well, it's going to make every other part of your life better. If you want to do well in an exam, then meditate. If you want to do well at sport, then meditate. It's just being aware of yourself. And I think, again, it comes down to like not then unconsciously putting stuff on other people. Like your emotions don't impact other people, or like you're more able to be present in a room and be actually present in that room and not be thinking about other things. It's just,
it's having I always say, if you're strong in your internal, then you'll learn to deal with the external. You know, you know, and that's the way I look at it. You know, and you're never perfect at it, but like anything, I think one thing that meditation has always taught me, you know, it's crazy. We always have this conversation, you know, especially like with other athletes or just friends in general that do like things for recovery or whatever. You feel amazing at that point, right? And you think, oh yeah, this is how I got to feel. And the next day comes and you go through the day and you just feel like shit. And then you realize everything is consistency. Everything is practice over time. Nothing is like you do something once and it feels great. And then you think to yourself, oh, this is how I got to just feel all the time and I'll be fine. But then the external creeps in and then your mind wanders off into things that you're like, wow. Like, and that's one thing that it taught me, was so many things that seemed relevant was actually irrelevant to me, you know, like it really wasn't. And I was like, man, I've just been playing this game in my head like unnecessarily the whole time. And then when you really focus, when you really hone in and focus on it, you're completely right. Like you realize, man, like I can deal with these situations. I always say like, you know, like for me personally, exercise is a form of meditation for me, right? I'm you know, it's something that I've always relied on. It's always something that I feel better afterwards, right? And it's like, you know, it's like you have all these things happening to you, you know, in your mind, like, you know, 100 million things going. And I feel like what meditation does is it doesn't get rid of it, but it just slows it right down so you can unpack it. And you know, and you think, 100 million things going on, but really you can unpack it. And half of it you're just like, get out of here. I don't even need you in my mind, you know. And I think that's the thing. It's just I think like, especially in the day and age that we live in, right? And I'm sure you as a mum are well aware, just, you know, our kids are going to be born into a different world, and what they have access to, and you know, even things that stimulate them at a very high level. So I think as the years go on and as time goes on, it's going to be more important for them to, like, actually, and I'm glad you touched on it, about the fact that we're built to think we have to be active and burn energy. We actually have to slow things down a little bit, you know. And I think, me personally, you know, time to time, that's what I got to do. Like, it's in me. Like, you know, me naturally, that's always been one of my biggest battles, was like, you know, I'll be thinking about things I have no control over sometimes, or I'm already thinking about the things I got to do, you know, when the day hasn't even come for it.
You're in the past or
or
in the present.
You know what I mean? I mean, the future, sorry. Future, you know, and that's really what meditation taught me, was like, yo, like, you're overthinking this, because end of the day, you're still going to get it done. You know what I mean? Whether you get it done in 2 days' time or you get it done, it's still going to get done, you know? And I think, you know, they're in for a big battle when it comes to that. And I think, you know, teaching them from a young age to, like, slow your roll and just embrace it and take your time, and don't, you know, don't get frustrated and things like that is important in the long run, you know,
having a vision and a goal, but then not being stressed about the outcome. That's it. You still got to have your imagination. You're going to have vision, otherwise you're just going to sit there. You got to have that drive. You got to have that effort, but then, okay, this doesn't happen, that's fine. Let's work out something else. Okay, that happens, great. Let's keep going. Like, being, like, irrespective of the outcome, you just going through life. There's a storm raging around you, you know how to handle it. Because I think if you don't have those foundations built on how to handle things healthily, that's in a healthy way, that's how you turn to drugs, alcohol. You might get really depressed. You don't know how to get out of it. Like, it's okay to feel any emotion, but knowing how to handle it, be around it, notice it, be aware of it. Then, like, you feel anger coming. Okay, cool. I know this feeling. I know what to do. Not, I don't know what to do. I'm gonna have a drink. I'm gonna do this or whatever it is. Like, being conscious of knowing how to deal with them, that's awareness. That's meditation. Meditation is just being aware. Like you said, you're going to slow down your thoughts. You slow them down so you notice them. That's, once you notice them, you know what to do with them.
100%.
The first thing is noticing them. And imagine building a child up who is aware of themselves from a young age onwards. They're going to be like...
Powerful, very powerful.
And not only to themselves, but to everyone around them. To be aware and conscious of yourself, your abilities, and to have confidence in them. Like, imagine the future if kids grew up like that. Like, imagine the leadership. And not everyone is going to have that, because and that's what you touched on, like your passions. You have to follow your passion. If this is your passion, do that. If that is your, not everyone is going to have the same thing, and that's how the world becomes balanced. But tapping into what you're good at is going to make the result of that the best outcome. So if you want to be a doctor, but that's what you should want to do. Because that you'll be the best at that when you want to do it. Everyone will be the best at what they want to do.
And I think it's what you think, you know, you should be earning, or the type of lifestyle you should be living, or the materialistic things that you should be owning, you know, is what clutters you and sometimes tries to define you. And it was funny because you know, one of my earliest jobs when I left it, you know, two gentlemen much older than me, but you know, they're my friends, and you know, they're all kids, and they like, you know, late 50s, 60s. But I remember we were having a coffee, and I was having a conversation with them, and I just said to them, like, you know, when you guys grew up, way before the social media era and everything, I said, if you wanted to be a painter, if you wanted to be a mechanic, and you finally got to do it, you would have been living like, man, I'm living my life, right? I said, there's so many things to compare yourself to, right? And it's almost like it is an illusion, because like all you're doing is looking through a lens, but you don't know anything else about that person except what you're seeing. And it's like a really, really, really like bad illusion into what you think you should be living.
It's like the Matrix.
It's like 100%. It is. It is. Like, you know, and it's funny. I was telling my wife this morning. I'm like, you know what? I'm actually like, other than me putting like my content out and things like that, and the flip side is I use it to my advantage, because it's allowed me to connect with so many people, including yourself. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't have been able to reach out or see what you're doing and be like, oh, that's who I want to connect with and try to do something with, right? So that, you know, but it's having that control between being too caught up in it versus, hey, I'm going to make this work for me. You know what I mean? And you know, like everyone always goes on about like, you know, algorithms and things like that, right? Like we are the algorithm. End of the day, yes, there's technology. Yes, there's the way this works. And if you put a picture of this person or a, you know, good-looking girl, you get more people looking, whatever. But the algorithm is you. You're allowing that to happen. You know what I mean? You're allowing that to happen. It's not that they are creating it in such a way that, oh, like we have to confide by it. No, we are defining it. You know what I mean? So
they need you at the end
of the day. 100%.
And you get to choose.
You get to choose. That's it. And I always say, like, we are the algorithm, not some technology, not something. They're just playing on how we do and deal with things, right? And I was telling him, I'm like, to be honest, like the battle is gonna be how much you can be step away from it, like, and you know, having my son and having our own family and being present, like going, you know, like now he's at an age where I take him to the park and he's going up the slides, and I'm just appreciating it now, because I realize we're going into the world where it's almost like they're trying to erase this feeling of being present and in the moment, and it's actually turning me off, like, you know what I mean? Because I'm like this is going to be the battle. How can we be in the present moment? Because they're trying to make it not as important, but this is the most important thing. You know what I mean? And then that's that battle now, you know, like you said, that whole Matrix versus, you know, the reality situation, right? And no one can take that away from you, you know, but only you can subdue yourself to those little things where you get caught up in this or that, or like, oh man, like this is the lifestyle I should be living, or you know what I mean? But the reason I bring that goes back to what you said. If you want to be a doctor, if you want to be thinking that's what you really want to do, don't compare that to anything. Don't compare what you're earning or your wealth to someone else's, because if you're doing what you love to do, that's it, man. Forget about everything else. There's a lot of things that don't come with you when you go, right? But your memories, what people feel about you and think about you, and the impact is everlasting. And that's, you know, that's the way I look at it. I'm like, when I think about the time then, you know, my kids got to go on without me. I don't want them to remember the, like, all the, you know, the things that we had, or the materialistic things we had. It's like the everlasting effect, like that's gonna, you know, impact them. That's a lifetime, you know what I mean? So,
and I think, like, you slightly touched on when you said, like, when you're happy with what you're doing, the material stuff doesn't matter. And that's like why you can be happy wherever you are in the world. You could be in the slums of somewhere and be happy, because that's the material stuff honestly doesn't matter if you're happy. It matters if you're not happy, because then you're searching for something to make you happy. That's when stuff comes in and you're like, this is going to make me happy. But external things are not going to make you happy. It's only your internal. You could literally have everything and be unhappy. You could have nothing and be happy. So where is happiness? It's inside us.
I'm sure you'd agree. Like, there's been times where we've gone and explored the world, right? And you're talking about the slums, and you're talking about people less fortunate than yourselves, and you're like, man, look how happy they are. Why? Because they haven't been introduced. They don't know what they're missing out on, so they're just living for that moment, right? They're living in the present. They don't know what they're missing out on, right? So it's like, you can't be sad about something you don't know exists. Because we live in an era now where we can see everything. You're already missing something that you don't even like.
FOMO.
You're like, it's irrelevant. You know what I mean?
But you wouldn't even think you're missing out if you're happy.
Happy, 100%.
Like, you wouldn't even consider that. You're just like fine in your not in your own bubble, in your own peace. Yeah, and so you're content.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate goal, right?
Yeah.
But you have to have that in yourself. You're never, ever going to find that with anyone else, like out externally, which is what like some of my episodes of Metta Minds is about. Like, you're not going to find it anywhere else. You've got to have it in yourself.
What's the meaning of Metta Minds? Like, how did you come up with it, and what's the whole concept behind it?
Metta Minds, Metta means loving kindness. So there's 4 kind of strong types of love: loving kindness, metta; karuna, compassion; mudita, like joy for others; and then upekkha, which is love without attachment. And those 4 give you happiness within yourself and with everything around you. So Metta Minds is having love in all those states for yourself, in your mind, and for everything around you.
So when you say love without attachment, what do you mean by that?
It's like being in complete peace and happiness because you've got kindness, compassion, joy for others, and then you just love.
It's a bit like what you said, like you're not attaching yourself to something to give you that, that love and happiness.
And you're not attaching yourself to, you're loving something like, you don't love someone expecting something in return. So you don't love your child expecting something in return, right? That's unconditional. So imagine that in every situation for everyone. So like, even if you spill a bottle of milk, looking that with upekkha, which is the final one, like it happened. Okay, cool. Let's just clean it up, right? Love for that situation. What did that teach you? I'm grateful for it. And letting it go. Who cares? You spilled some milk, just clean it up. Do you know what I mean? But it's so easy to get frustrated. Like Anara, like I love cooking with Anara, and you have to be so cooking with a child will teach you.
I'm glad you're telling me, because eventually that's my step, because my little man, he loves it. I love cooking, right? Cool. Obviously we touched on it a little bit, So that's something like I was saying, like I have to, because like I know he's gonna be a fan.
She'll spill like dal, like the lentils. Just put the whole thing, and I'm like, okay, cool. We just clean it up. How do we clean it up? The moment you're like, oh my God, like this happened, then they learn, okay, we have to react like this over something bad that happens. But if you're seeing every situation as, okay, cool, love, you know, through love, through the lens of love, through the lens of chill, through the lens of like, this has happened, so what? Then they're going to grow up when bad stuff happen. Okay, so what? I know how to do it. I know how to do with this. I know how to clean it up. I'll go get a dustpan and do it. And you know, she's like 1 year, well, like similar age to your kid, and cleaning stuff up. And cooking is great if you do that with it. It's going to teach you love,
because I'm going to be doing it, right? Like I'm going to be doing it. Like I've been doing it since, and I play a big role in that, like in our meals and how we eat at home. So it's just going to be natural. Like I grew up watching my mum cook, and that's where my love for it came, right? So I just know, like, and it's funny, you talk about cleaning and stuff, like that's what he does. Sometimes he gets the duster and we say, oh, thank you for cleaning it, or even like, you know, they put everything in their mouth and stuff, but there's certain things he'll grab and he kind of knows now, and wife like, oh, I don't think I should be putting this in my mouth, and then you know, he'll just come and give it to us, and then, you know, it's like even just saying thank you for giving it to you know, thank you for giving it to me, or things like that. Obviously, you know, like there's times where my patience get tested when he does certain things. 100%. And so, you know, my wife always tells me, like, you know, she'll try to tell me, like, you know, because I'll be in the middle of doing something or whatever, and you'll be like, you know, and then, like you just said, through the lens of their eyes, I'm like, he's not meaning it. He doesn't know that he's doing something wrong. It's just like, you know, it's kind of like calmly kind of telling them or teaching him, you know, an alternative way, or saying, you know, trying to make sense to him, right? And it's something, you know, I wouldn't say I'm bad at it, but even just those little moments. But I feel like those little moments are good, because it needs to reiterate to yourself, like, yo, because sometimes I feel like it's a reflection of how you're feeling about something too, right?
Yes.
So it's like, yo, I gotta chill out. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm getting a bit moody right now.
Well,
you know what I mean?
that, and you know to be grateful for that situation. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay to be frustrated. That's okay too. Like, we've got to give ourselves some slack, and that's a part of being aware as well. Like, okay, cool, I'm frustrated. Why? And you know it's because of your day, not what they did.
It's something completely different to that situation.
So just knowing that is great. And that's all you need to do is be aware. And remember, it's practice. No one's perfect. Just like anything else, we have to practice. And I was going to say cooking is great because you'll see as you start now, like I cook with Anara since she could stand. And now I'll give her something she'll do that. Like she'll make a salad, you know, and that just shows you how practice happens. You have to have patience with yourself. You have to have patience with, okay, I was teaching her how to hold a knife. Like, how many times did you do that, right? Now she's confident to cook over the stove, over a frying pan at 3.5, and I know she's not going to burn herself, right? Wow. But it comes from like all that practice. And don't give up on your kids. You just have to be patient and practice. And my parents never let us do those things. They made us do them, but they didn't let us do it with them.
Oh, gotcha.
So making us do is like, you have to come help me, and we're like a teenager, we don't want to come, right? But if you're doing it with them from when they're young, you're just modeling good behavior. And so then it doesn't become a chore or anything. And that's what, like, modeling good behavior is modeling patience, modeling cleaning up stuff without a fuss. Like, you're just showing them more than telling them. And then they think it's just a part of life. And that's again what I'm trying to do with Metta Minds, is like being confident, being loving, being kind, being in every situation, cleaning up stuff, cooking, cleaning, whatever it is, living your life. If you're approaching that with that patience and that love, then you're going to grow up thinking that's how life is. And then you'll be a better human.
It's accepting that as well, like that things aren't going to go your way, right? And letting them know that it's all right. Like, you know what I mean? I always said, like, you know, when he does something, he tries to do something, he falls or whatever, I always say to him, I'm like, son, there's going to be 1,000,000 times you're going to go through this. It's all right. Like, this is what happens. You got to fall and you got to get back up again and you got to keep going, you know? I'm like, that's life, you know what I mean? But it's, you know, I think it takes going through those experiences yourself to realize, man, I don't want them to experience things the way I did, but also just be in a better state of mind to deal with those things, you know? And I think that we have a big opportunity to do that because, you know, a lot of things, even in relationship with your parents, like you remind me a lot of like my wife with her relationship with her parents, because a lot of it was, we gave birth to you, you got to do this for us, like literally to a T, like, you know, and you know, and so like, you know, she always worries like about trauma and like her being like that, right? Like her being like that and stuff. You know, which she's not, which I always remind her that you're not, and you never will be because
you're aware of it.
And she, you know, she's got her own, like, she just started her own like decor business and things like that. So like we try to get him involved, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, just see us passionately doing things so that it rubs off on him, you know what I mean? That, hey, like, you know, we're doing things that we enjoy, but at the same time, this is work. You got to put in the work, you know? Because I think that's one of the biggest things that I knew about her was like, you know, like cleaning the house or doing this, doing that because we have to, you know what I mean? This is what you do, you know, basically you got to look, you know, we gave you birth and this is what you got to do. And that's ingrained in her, you know, whereas it's funny, like, and you were saying like with girls and boys is different. Like she has a sister and she always used to tell her, like she says, you know, like there's no boys, and if there was boys in the family, it'd be a whole different, like you wouldn't sit here like copping it, you know what I mean? But then she goes, when I came in, lived with you and, you know, we lived with, and be around your parents, she goes, it's weird, like you can have a conversation with your mom and she'll listen. Like she was actually listening to you. She's listening to you, like, you know, like even if you guys have an argument, it's a constructive argument. She goes, it's weird, like, you know, it's weird, like she goes, like she goes, I have the most like the best time, because like I don't even have to like, because when we first got married, like, you know, I'm gonna vacuum the houses, and I'm like, chill out.
Yeah.
She goes, I've never hung out in your room.
Is she a firstborn?
She's the firstborn. Yeah. And she's like, I've never just hung out in your room.
Yeah,
and
never
like, she's like,
relaxed.
I'm paranoid because I should be doing this. I should be
Yes.
doing that. I'm like, chill out, man, chill out.
Oh
It's
my
all
God.
right, you know.
I relate to her.
And like, whereas, you know, it's me and my brother only. So it's 2 boys. So my mom's got 3 men in the house
Yeah.
and 2 crazy boys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for her, it was really changed the perspective, because you got to see a different family dynamic, as like, you know, with someone that, you know, who's allowed to say how he feels, and, you know,
Not be afraid
of
the
consequences
consequences of that,
and repercussions, like, and have someone that's willing to listen to you and actually be like trying to understand where that pain or that hurt or that feelings are coming from, you know. So
Oh my God, your wife and I could
yeah
have it.
So when you said that, I started laughing, because I'm like, bro, she's gonna love this, because she's like, you know, she's like, that's what she told me, and she goes,
it's nice to be seen, and it's nice to be heard.
And she always says your mom loves you guys unconditionally. She goes, no matter what, no matter the drama you've caused her or whatever it is, even if you know, like you didn't go to uni, you probably didn't do the type of job that they visioned for you, but it's unconditional. Like she loves you guys no matter what. And I said to her, it wasn't always like that, but it came over time. Through the interaction, through me breaking out of this little box and this, you know, this parameter that was put around me, that this is what I should be doing. And then it allowed them to grow and see, oh, wait a second, he has interest in this and this and this and this. And then it naturally grew. And that's what I said to her. I was like, but you got to be willing to go through those uncomfortable periods to send that message and to have that interaction in order to have that peace that you have now. You know, there's better understanding, better family dynamic, better discussions because of that. So it's, you know, some people, like you said, are very suppressed and they don't want to speak out, or they don't want to tell people how they feel, even though they should, regardless of the repercussions, you know. And so I said, you know, it wasn't easy work. I said, you're just enjoying the fruits of my labor right now, but, you know. But it's funny, like, you know, her the way she was raised up was very different and very different to me. And it was crazy. Sometimes when I see that, I'm like, what? I'm like, you know, but it feels weird to me because that wasn't, you know, how it was. Yeah, exactly. But I can understand as well. So when you touched on it, I was like, man, I completely agree, because it plays a big part. And, you know, it's just, it took her a while to really realize, like,
it's okay.
It's okay. Like, I can chill out. I can do this. I can do that, and whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah.
I'm currently exploring that difference between conditional love and unconditional love, and for her, she probably, like it is for me. So I don't want to say it is for her. For me, it is comfort in the unconditional. In the unconditional. Comfort in the conditional love, because that's all I know. So then the unconditional love is uncomfortable, because you're like, I'm allowed to be anyone I want, and it's going to be okay. Because you're so, conditioned to think a different way. And that's the same, like, it's great that you're aware of it and you model it for your kids, because then they'll know you're going to love them unconditionally, and I can be whoever I want. And even in the sense where you feel, they feel a feeling, and that's okay. Like, you feel you're having a tantrum, that's okay. I got you. You know, I'm not telling you to stop it. I'm not telling you to be somebody else. You can be whoever you want to be. I'm going to love you anyway. And slowly they'll learn, like, they're going to learn how to regulate their emotions and everything, but it's just accepting them how they are. And those kind of conversations you have with them now is when they get older and they're having a hard time, they'll come to you and talk to you about it, because they know they got you. They're not going to judge you. And your parents were probably like that, where, correct me if I'm wrong, they got you no matter how you feel. And I didn't have that. And so I grew up thinking they don't have me if I'm in a particular way. And I wasn't open. I couldn't have an open conversation with them about anything, because I was afraid of what they'd say. And also they didn't have an open conversation with me. So how can I trust them with my feelings? So with, I noticed also with Anara, she's had a bad day. I could just sense it. I know it. She's got a scratch on her face. Someone's hurt her. But I'll ask her about it. She won't tell me. So I'll be like, oh, yeah, you know what happened in my day? Like, I did this and it was the funniest thing, and then this happened, and then all of a sudden she's like, you know what, Ami, this happened in my day, right? And I didn't understand till that moment when she was probably three and a bit, that if I'm open with her, she's going to trust me to be open with me. And that is, again, looking at it unconditionally, with love, with like patience, with chill, every situation, any conversation. And that is unconditional. That's unconditional love.
For me, that's, if you put everything else aside, that's what I want.
Yeah.
That's what I want. I want them to be able to tell me anything, and I also want them to be able to experience what I'm going through.
Yeah.
Just so that, like, that example was, your daughter was here and you were here, and as soon as you came and met her here, she realized she was comfortable enough to talk to you about it. And it's because you're sharing your experiences, which makes it comfortable for them to share your experiences. And it's funny because obviously my little man doesn't really understand, I'm very big on energy. I'm very, very, very big on it. And so sometimes even when I know that he doesn't understand what I'm saying, I know he can feel it. And it's like when he cries or when I'm talking and he's had a bad, or when he's crying, I just say, it's okay. I said, I cry all the time. You know what I mean? And I always say, some days are good days, some days are not so good days. But I said, both days we just do what we do. We get through it, And I always say that, because, and maybe secretly that's what I wanted when I was growing up.
100%.
You know what I mean? And that's probably
100%.
what it is. A lot of it is what would have I wanted in those moments. You know what I mean? And like you touched on it brilliantly when it came to that. It's that openness to be able to have those conversations. I think I didn't care about anything else. That's all I would want. I would just want them to tell me the good and the not so good things that are happening and their experiences, because I think that would eat me up more than anything. It's just not knowing about it and not being able to have a conversation about it. And I think, it's always different when it's your kids, but I think you always got to base it on your experiences, and your experiences are always going to be a catalyst for how you deal with them, with certain things, right? Because you're like, not everything you've done is always just been perfect, or it's always been rocky, or you've always made decisions that weren't the best decisions. And I always think like that's not going to change for them, right? Like no matter how much you tell them, end of the day, like your kids are going to make decisions or bad decisions, or decisions that don't benefit them, or make a lot of mistakes. That's going to happen regardless. But I always say to myself, no matter what, I want them to be able to have the tools to learn how to deal with it. And as long as they have the tools, the healthy tools to learn how to deal with it, I'll be okay. I'm not going to stop them from making mistakes. I'm not going to stop them from making drastic mistakes and and decisions that are going to be harmful for them or something, because I can't. Like eventually they're going to, like again, it goes to the whole idea of like, it's passed on that we gave birth to you, so I own you. No, I always say, like, even when I'm holding him, whatever, I go, one day you're not going to need dad the way you need me now. You're not going to need Appa the way you need him now. But like, I'm always there, you know what I mean? But you're going to grow into your own person, and you're going to have your own decisions, and you're going to have your own mind, and you're going to chase after it. And that's really what it is. It's sad as it sounds. There's going to be a time where you're going to have to be like, go out to the wild, you know what I mean? And
that's going to happen sooner than you think when they start preschool or whatever, And you just have to trust that they have the tools. And again, practice. And then that trust that you have is faith in them. And it's actually faith in yourself as well. That you're going to be okay no matter what they do. They're going to be okay no matter what they do. And again, that's looking at it unconditionally, because you already know you're going to love them, and they know that you're going to love them, and that's being comfortable and happy in yourself. And you being comfortable and happy in yourself. A lot of our parents were worried about what other people would think.
100%.
And so they
That's
did a lot of
100%.
But if you're comfortable with how you think, you're comfortable with the way they think, none of that other noise matters. And so you just get rid of that. Like, it doesn't matter anymore.
It comes back to what I said. Everything that seems relevant is actually irrelevant. And it's because it's just been instilled in you through your and that's a big one. The one where they're so worried about everyone else. Really, their worries are about what everyone else thinks, as opposed to how does my son or daughter feel about me? You know what I mean? Right now. And if they attach themselves to that, then really everything else is irrelevant. And they realize, like, people, because especially right for us, you know, family, all that is a big part. But end of the day, what I always tell my mum is, yeah, this person's family and everything, but they're also human beings. They can think for themselves. They do things for themselves. So regardless, no one is sitting there thinking my blood runs through them and therefore I have to be respectful. No, that shit doesn't work that way. I said, family or not family, you have your close. You connect with certain people and you don't connect with certain people, or you share certain ideologies. You treat everyone with kindness, of course, but there are certain people that are part of your village. You know what I mean? And that's the truth. Whether they're family or not family is not gonna, or whether they are family, is not gonna change that. It's not gonna make someone automatically understand how you feel or what you're going through or support you or you know what I mean? And that's what they realize. And you're always fighting for approval from someone, and that's irrelevant to the matter, and eventually, you know, they're just gonna ignore you, or they're just going to go about their lives, and you realize, oh, here I am,
I'm doing it for someone,
when really they're not even giving me the attention. So look, I'm trying to be mindful of your time as well, but how do you, two questions obviously, but one is what your purpose behind what you're doing. I know you touched a bit on it, but what your overall, and how do you come up with all the different concepts that you come up with? Not so much how you undertake it and how you show certain, you know, what courage and etc. But how do you touch on those certain topics? Like, how do you develop, like, you know, today I want to talk about courage or etc. Like, how do you come up with that?
I have a plan, like a syllabus, and it's generally like building yourself up to being this person with concepts like gratitude, compassion, kindness, and having all those things. Then we can touch on how do you deal with that when anger is present, or how do you deal with that when frustration is present, how do you deal with that when love is present, and then it's very like subtly put in along the way. And I make a rough plan. Okay, this term we're going to cover these topics, and then next term, once we've built on that and we've introduced those topics, then next term we can go to another aspect of them or so on. So I do have a rough plan on how it goes, and that's why they happen in a particular order too, so that it can grow with understanding and introducing ideas like meditation, and then developing it further or looking at it in different ways, and then also like very subtly introducing things. So then that leads on to the broader vision of, if we introduce these topics from we're young, we're ingrained, we're not thinking about it, it's just a part of who we are. Use
that for the
and then
overall.
You just become this great person. Not great person, you become a person who could be great, who appreciates everything around them, who treats people well, who is kind but confident and assertive, you know, has all those things. And then that would be my vision for the future, like, you know, developing a little child army from now, that when they grow up, they become...
I think for me, the biggest goal is just you want to be comfortable in your own skin. And it's not as easy as just saying I want to be comfortable in my own skin, because there's so many things, right? Mental, physical things that can impact that. And I think that's the most important thing is if you're comfortable in your own skin, then again, you're just going to learn to navigate through things in a different way, and then you're going to be comfortable and have a good foundation. I think that's the main thing. Like when things don't go your way, like you always say, you got to revert back and say, okay, this is how I feel, and have certain tools and mechanisms that you can fall onto to help you get through that. You know, and I think that's really, really important.
And I think when you are comfortable with yourself, like when we talked about, you can only give what you have. When you're comfortable with yourself, you're comfortable with any situation. That's it. That's all you need. Once you're comfortable with any situation that happens around you, that's it. You're good. You're happy. You know, you are happy, so you put happiness on others. And you're comfortable. You're content. You just are. And you're doing the best you can as a human. And that to me is happiness, and that to me is what Metta Minds is about. And Metta Minds... I chose Metta because that's the first one out of the 4. Just to open the door to the others. You know, and then once your mind is full of Metta, you have a Metta mind, then it leads to everything else.
Everything else, It's very true. It's important. I think you realize as well, right? It's like I always say, I use an example, like if you're thinking about how do I get to step number 10 and you haven't even got to step number 2, everything seems so chaotic. You're like, well, how am I going to do this?
Yeah.
But then, like, you just worry about what do I need to do next? What do I need to do next? And before you know it, you find yourself at step number 10, step number 20, and you're like, holy shit, how did I get here? You know? But it's because you focused on the little intricacies of what do I do next? And what do I do next? What can I do next? And then you just find yourself there. And I think it's when you look at the bigger picture without thinking all the little steps, it can be scary. And that's kind of how life is sometimes, right? You know, sometimes it's about just like being happy in your own skin, being happy with what you have around you, and knowing that that's enough. Because people are always going to throw other things at you, and the world is always going to throw things at you to think, oh, I need more. But sometimes you could just be happy with what you have, and that's okay. You know what I mean? That's life. Like it's all right. Like you know, and I think it's just about being at peace with that it's whatever I do, as long as I'm doing it, I'm happy. Like you know, but. Look, I won't keep you for any longer. I know you're working up at 12 in the morning. You're probably itching to get home. But look, I really, really appreciate it. And let me be the, you know, obviously won't be the first and last to say it, but I think what you're doing is really, really good. It's really important. And I think especially for, you know, people from our background and the way we grew up with our parents and et cetera, I think it sets a really good platform, because I think there's so much potential and there's so much variety in what our kids can do in general, let alone obviously, you know, the route that we've taken from, you know, and all the experiences we've had. And I think it's really important, you know, for them to believe that they can do anything. And I think, you know, we're the first generation of what's coming, you know, and I always say, like, you know, sometimes you may not live out your vision of what you have for yourself, but what you do around you and what you do for your kids, they might live out that vision for you, and that is still just as important, and that is still a big part of your success. And that's the way I look at even with what I'm doing. You know, I always think I want to open as many doors and experiences for him that if he lives it out, I'll be happy. You know what I mean? I'll be really happy, and that's very sincerely, like, you know, because that's life, man. Some things aren't going to go your way, but it's all on how you look at it, right? Perspective is everything. If you have a different perspective, then what seemed like a shortfall is not really a shortfall, you know? So, I think what you're doing is really important, and I think that's, you know, it's going to play a big part, not just for what you do for your kids and, you know, your students, but for people like myself and anyone else that's tuning in and watching as well, because I think it's a different way to look at it, and it's a very creative way, and you know, like I said, if I'm sitting there thinking, whoa, that makes sense at this age in my 30s, then I know for a fact that it's going to impact them very differently, you know. So keep doing it, you know, keep doing your thing, keep putting their good content out, and those teachings. And I think at the same time, you know, you're giving parents something to do with their kids as well, you know, which is very important, because we all know, you know, we always, you know, I'm always sitting there thinking, oh, you know, what else can I, you know, do with them, and etc. But sometimes it's just the little things, you know, giving them the attention and being there present when they need you to be present, drawing with them, things like that. And I think sometimes we overthink what we need to do for them, and really it's just being present with them. And it's something I keep telling myself, he just needs me to be there for him. That's it. You know, sometimes everything else is like, hey, I got it, don't worry. You know, like everyone at his daycare loves him. Like, he, you know, has so much fun, and they always get really good feedback from him in terms of how he interacts with others. And that's it. That's his fun. But when he comes home, he probably just wants to be with us, and he needs the love and the care, and, you know. So, look, I really love what you're doing. I really do, and I'm sure many others do. And you know, I really appreciate you coming. I really wanted to talk to you after, you know, I saw what you were doing with Metta Minds. Metta Minds. Oh man, I just but look, I really appreciate it, and you know, I wish you all the best, and I know that it's gonna turn out however way that you vision it to be.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and thanks for having me. And don't underestimate what you're doing.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Following your heart and what you want to do, that's the biggest gift you can give. So
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thanks.